Hey everybody, welcome to Board Online, Board Offline. Today we are doing number 20 through 11 of our top 50 best games of all time. If you have missed the previous videos, be sure to go back and check them out. And now we're starting with number 20, Tawantinsuyu, the Inca Empire. So this is, it's sort of a rondel game with some worker placement aspects to it. I say rondel, but except that normally with a rondel you're going to have a rondel that actually rotates on the board, whereas in this case you're kind of rotating your pieces instead. Let's get down to the board itself first. So every player is going to have a priest that's up here at the top, and you'll be moving your priest around up here depending on the various conditions of the game and what you're trying to accomplish. And there are all these workers in the game as well that you will be acquiring and using. The different colors have slightly different powers and everything. And so if your priest is here, then this section from here to here is going to be the cheapest for you to put a worker out on. On one of these, and then when you put them out, you look at the symbols around the worker and you can get some benefits from that. But if you want to go down a step, then that's going to be more expensive. And if you want to go over a step, away from where the priest is, so this area here, go over this way, all that's going to make it more expensive. You got places over here where you can acquire workers, and here then you can be putting stuff out on these different conquest areas here. You can be working your way up this temple track over here. There's so much stuff going on in this game. You can be acquiring these idols right here. These cards right here work for the conquest and everything, as well as some other stuff going on there. You have these tapestries that you can be weaving together, and they all have, as you weave them together, they all have different symbols on here as well that affect the game. You've got different resources that you got stone, corn, potatoes. There's gold in here as well. So much going on. And that's right, you even have production buildings. So you have these production buildings, and then some of them are these right here are production buildings that give you different benefits, and then these right here are passive buildings that give you continuous benefits as well. There's so much going on here, so much to look at, so much to, different ways to try to work your way around the score track here on the edge of the board. And obviously the person with the highest score wins, but there's lots of different ways you can try to tackle that problem of how you win. It has a great player that comes to the game, and this is for the solo version, which actually I have not tried solo yet. I really should do that. But it has this player aid. You got these the different abilities for the workers, like I said, all kinds of cool stuff going on here. I really enjoy this. This is Tawantinsuyu. All right, number 19 is The Search for Planet X. This is a deduction game where you are going to be using an app. And it actually has the board itself creates a way for you to play on different difficulty levels. So you have, so this is the normal side, and then on this side there's more spaces, so this is the more difficult side. And you'll have the app going, and the app will basically set up everything as far as how the deduction is going to go down. It's going to give you some initial information, and the players, you'll have these player screens to help you keep your notes and everything secret. It also doubles as this great player aid here. You'll be using one of these notepads here, and as you can see, let's see this side. So this side is for the easy side, yeah. So this side right here is for this more challenging side, and you'll be taking notes on here, trying to figure out what is in each sector, because what you're trying to find is Planet X. But Planet X is the one thing that's going to appear empty, even though it's not. But you've got comets, asteroids, dwarf planet, truly empty sectors, gas clouds, and then Planet X. But you can see that each of these has their own rules. So a dwarf planet is never adjacent to Planet X. Gas clouds is each gas cloud is adjacent to at least one truly empty sector. All right, well, truly empty sectors just are empty, even though Planet X will also appear empty. Asteroids, each asteroid is adjacent to one other asteroid in either 2 pairs or a group of 4. So, you know, so for instance, if you find out there is an asteroid here, well, then you know that either 6 or 4 or both also have an asteroid. And so you can start, you know, paring down where everything is, because you can see Planet X is not adjacent to a dwarf planet and appears empty in surveys and targets. And comets can only be located in particular sectors, as shown on your note sheet. So on the note sheet here, you can see there's no possibility of a comet 15, 16, but 17 has a comet possibly. 13 possibly does, 11, and so there's only certain spots those can be. And so as you are working your way around, you just, like I say, you have some starting information, and then you'll start you can target, let's see, what is it? Target, research, and survey. You can use those different things. Survey is kind of you could say, oh, I'm going to survey sectors 4, 5, and 6, right? And that'll take 4 time. And so you've got your piece out here. And if that took you 4 time, and 1, 2, 3, 4, you move up there. And so what that means then is that red maybe would do something that would only take them say 1 time, and maybe they research it, so they move there. And so that means now red is actually going to go again, because they have not caught up to you on the track yet. And if they did something that only costs 2 time, well, then they get to go again. And so you can see how when somebody moves way ahead of you, it might be worth to take a couple of lesser actions, but get a couple more of them, and then right here now really jump ahead, or maybe you just go just a little bit in front of them. That way they then take a couple more actions, and it's your turn again. As you're working your way through this, you'll be taking notes, trying to figure out where Planet X is, and you put out guesses, and so or theories, I should say. And so maybe if you think there's an asteroid here, Ray will put that out, and then once it reaches here, then they'll flip it over and see if their theory was correct. And you get points for correct theories. You don't technically have to find Planet X to win the game, which is pretty cool. You can operate more on trying to get points from these theories and stuff. And yeah, it's a really fun game. It's solo capable, which I have played solo and enjoyed it. The AI is pretty tough, actually, so it's a good, challenging time. That's the search for Planet X. All right, so in this section of the list, I have more games that I don't own than any other section of the list, so we're going to be coming back up top here several times throughout the video. Number 18 is Beyond the Sun. This is a game that is a giant technology tree. You start with some baseline technologies, and you also have your own player board, but the main board is this technology tree plus a sort of solar system or galaxy board off to the right of that has some different planets that you can end up going to and settling and that sort of thing. But as you're going, you're going to have ships, you're going to have some resources, and you are trying to basically advance your technology as quickly as possible, and be the person who is the most advanced at the end of the game. And it has randomized, like you deal out cards for the technology, so you're not unlocking the same stuff every time. They have different, I believe, 4 different suits of technologies, and some of the techs actually combine 2 suits, which is really cool. And based off of which ones you unlock, it'll determine what your path forward is and all this kind of stuff. Very, very cool, really interesting game, and the unlocking of those technologies just feels so good. It takes that, because I always love it in a video game if I level up and I get to unlock some sort of new power, or in or a video game when you're just doing technologies and you unlock that next technology and you're kind of progressing up that technology tree. That feeling of unlocking that next thing feels so good, and that's what this entire game is built around, is that giant technology tree in the middle of the play area. So Beyond the Sun is a lot of fun. Definitely check it out. That's my number 18. My number 17 is Terraforming Mars. This is, of course, a classic at this point. I still have never played it solo. I've only played it multiplayer, but it is a blast multiplayer. You definitely play with the Prelude expansion. This is the Prelude expansion. Basically, starts the players off with some starting resources, some starting stuff there, because one of the big complaints was that the beginning of the game was fairly slow and fairly repetitive. If you played Terraforming Mars numerous times, then you kind of knew what the opening moves were, and so Prelude cuts out that initial 20 minutes or so, from what I understand. I've only ever played with Prelude and really like having that initial stuff already there ready to go. So Terraforming Mars, you are on Mars as the name suggests, and you've got several different tracks. You've got the water track, you've got the oxygen track, and the heat track, and you're trying to get those tracks pushed towards a habitable position. And so you're putting out tiles onto Mars itself. You're claiming different areas. You're setting up oceans. You're doing all these different things, but you're also working against the other players. So while you are trying to terraform Mars, you're trying to make sure that you set yourself up to be in the best position, the most powerful position, once Mars is a habitable planet. And so that's sort of the theme of the game. You've got different corporations that are involved. There's some cards that are really like some powerful moves that you can make. I mean, there's one where you play that essentially crashes an asteroid into your opponent. So, there's a lot of crazy stuff that can happen in the game, but it is a lot of fun. The whole concept of moving up these 3 tracks towards making the planet habitable is really, really cool. Oh, and the cool thing with those tracks as well is you're not just moving up these tracks. There's certain cards that will only be playable once, it's warm enough for these types of events to happen, or once there is enough oxygen on the planet for these types of events to happen. So all the cards are thematically tied into what those 3 tracks are doing. It's a really cool interconnected experience. That's Terraforming Mars. Number 16 is the Dale of Merchants Collection. Now, this includes Dale of Merchants Collection, which is its own release, plus Dale of Merchants 1, 2, and 3. This is a set collection game where you have all these different... Again, I have all 4 sets right now. All these different factions, basically, and when you're playing, you're going to take, I believe, if it's a 2-player game, you take 3 factions. Yeah, as many players as there are, plus 1. So, for instance, maybe, and you can do it randomly. They have random deck selection cards and everything. But, so you've got the Adapting Veiled Chameleons. Well, you know what? Let me show you how those deck selection cards work. So let's say we have, all right, this Systematic Eurasian Beavers. So we take them right here. All right, and in their deck, you're gonna have all these. Well, let's see. This is actually a expansion. I'm not sure how all that works. I think this was like a mini expansion or something, but yeah, this was a mini expansion. But so you have these the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 5, right? And as you're playing, you're going to be building stalls going up to, I believe, 8, and basically by stacking these numbers. So stall 1 is only going to need a 1, right? But then stall 2, maybe you could use 2 1s to build that, or just the 2, right? Now keep in mind that these are all going to be in your deck, right? So there's going to be, let's go on and finish building the initial deck. So we've got the prepared grizzled tree kangaroos. And then the enthusiastic wood turtles. And so you would actually put all those together, create a deck, and then build an offer that you'd have out here, and so the card right here would be free to take, or not free. It just wouldn't have any increase in cost. But then as you go up, the cost is going to increase. But with these cards, they have, not only are you building these stalls with them, but they also have abilities here. And the higher the number, the more powerful the ability is going to be. And as you're going through and collecting these cards, you're trying to kind of build an engine. And so there's this sort of trick of trying to figure out, well, while these cards are in my hand, they're offering me these abilities and everything, but eventually I've got to create the stalls, and once I create a stall with that card, it's gone. It's not in my hand anymore. It's out here being, working my way up to 8. So you have to create stall 1 first, then stall 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And as you're doing that, you are losing the abilities of these cards, but working your way towards victory. And another cool thing is you can see all these different factions are very different. So the enthusiastic wood turtles have a complexity of 3, but they have very low player interactivity, no nastiness whatsoever between the players, and a little bit of randomness. Whereas the prepared grizzled tree kangaroos are basically similar in how they work in terms of these different, complexity is 1 lower, but interactivity, nastiness, and randomness are the same. It does say though that with interactivity it might increase based on other decks. And then, oh wow, so all these were actually very similar. So let's see, let me show you some other possibilities. So here, with the thieving northern raccoons, low complexity but high interactivity, high nastiness, and pretty high randomness. Then you'll have some that have very high randomness, like the superstitious snowshoe hares, 3 randomness, but no nastiness, 1 interactivity, and 2 complexity. So, and I believe, yes, with these, the snowshoe hares, for instance, use this blue dye. And so has a lot to do with why they have such high randomness. You'll be collecting money and everything as you play, depending on which faction you're using. And then of course you have some optional rules that can increase the complexity. You have character cards. Yeah, these character cards, the red ones are very complex, the yellow ones are less complex, and the green ones are fairly straightforward. And these can give you different powers and stuff. Some of the factions use this. There's a day-night cycle that some of the factions will use to help determine how their cards are going to be working at different points in the game. So, and again, there's all these different factions here. So every time you play, you're going to have these different combinations of factions that are going to interact with each other differently. It's a lot of fun. Dale of Merchants. Number 15 is Twilight Imperium 4th Edition. This is a game that we, at this point, I've managed to get some people together that basically once a year we get together and we play Twilight Imperium 4th Edition. This is an absolutely epic space what am I trying to say here? A sprawling space opera of a game, basically. You, when you first set up the board, that's actually part of the game because it is modular and all the players, it's not set out randomly. The players are actually kind of choosing where they want different tiles to go and trying to set themselves up ahead of time to be in a good political and military position. And then as you start playing the game, everybody's slowly working their way towards the center of the board because Marital Rex is the seat of imperial power and it's been abandoned. And so the first person to get back there gains some political advantage, whoever holds Marital Rex. And then once you have made it back, it adds a new phase to the game where you actually set the Senate up. And so now everyone is dealing with some politics, push and pull, setting up laws, all this kind of stuff. Every round there's some new objectives that come out that players are trying to succeed at. And we've had games where, for instance, the last game that we played, we had one guy who everybody was fairly certain was going to win the game. He just has this sort of mindset that really plays well with Twilight Imperium 4th edition. But I didn't quite buy into it, and so I wasn't willing to completely focus on him because I thought I had some threats to my left as well. And then by the time I realized, oh, look what he's doing, because everybody else had been kind of beating up on him a good bit during the game, I realized that I needed to turn towards him. But it was too late at that point. He actually managed to pull off the victory. Like, it was like all of a sudden he completed 2 or 3 objectives, in a row, several turns in a row. And then that was it. That was all there was to it. You build these space armadas, tons of ships moving across the board. You can do alliances with players, but whether or not the alliances are going to hold up is a whole other story. There's so much cool theme poured into this game. There's a ton of different races, different factions that you can play as. They all have their own abilities. You've got your normal humans, but you've got everything else you can imagine too. I mean, there's cybernetics. There's a group that just wants to farm. There's a group that is like a virus. I think that's right. Or am I getting confused with? I might be getting confused with a different game, but I'm pretty sure there's a virus race in there as well. There's a ton of crazy stuff. Of course, the lion people that are on the cover of every TI4 box or every Twilight Imperium box, every edition I think has had the lion race on the box cover. Oh, there's so much good stuff in this game. I'm actually getting excited talking about it because in August we're probably going to be playing it again. So Twilight Imperium 4th edition, an absolute massive experience. Expect to set aside 6 to 8 hours to play this game. I think we've played it in about 6 every time we've played it. That's my number, what did I say? 15. Number 15, Twilight Imperium 4th edition. All right, now number 14 is Architects of the West Kingdom. This has become my favorite West Kingdom game at this point. It is a worker placement game where you start with all your workers, which is sort of a mind-blowing idea. Like, why has nobody else thought of this before? You start with a ton of workers. I mean, I don't remember how many. I want to say it's around 20. And then you put them out on the board. And every time you put a worker in a spot, and you get a little bit of benefit. But then if you put another worker in that same spot with that first one, the benefit gets better. And the more workers you have in a spot, the better the benefit is. And so eventually the other players are going to be like, we got to do something about this. We got to stop him. And so they can then arrest your guys, stick them in jail, and you got to pay to get them out. And this whole concept of directly affecting the other players by taking their guys and sticking them in jail is a really cool idea. And then as you're playing, you're working your way towards the objective. And then there's options you can take that are a little bit more powerful, but might end up causing you, I want to say it's called corruption, or I'm pretty sure it's called corruption that you end up taking. But you know, as long as you get rid of that corruption by the end of the game, then it's not going to be a problem for you. But at the end of the game, you know, if you still have this corruption and stuff that you've collected, that's when you're going to lose some points for it. You might end up losing the game because of it. And so you could, but then again, maybe you build up enough points. Maybe you've built up a strong enough engine that whatever corruption you've acquired is still going to leave you in a position to win the game because you have been played so strongly otherwise. And you know, there's different characters that different villagers that you will acquire throughout the game that will, you know, help you along the way. And I just really though love this concept with architects of having just so many workers to begin the game, because so often with worker placement games there's this feeling of you just barely can do anything at the beginning of the game, and so you need to acquire new workers. You know, that's for sure one of the first things you got to do. And I like that that Architects takes that sort of typical worker placement idea out of the picture. You don't have to worry about acquiring new workers because you got them all. And now you just have to worry about keeping them out of jail. So that's Architects of the West Kingdom. Number 13 is Tiny Epic Dungeons. All right, so this one is the first in the Tiny Epic series to really grab my interest. I've played Tiny Epic Galaxies, which was pretty good. I've played Tiny Epic Pirates, which I wasn't so thrilled with. This one I really like a lot. The map is going to be completely modular. Let's see. Let's find some of these map tiles. Well, so before we get to map tiles, so these potions are part of an expansion, but you can see you've got all this great artwork on here. Now, I will say a ton of symbology, right? Pretty difficult to initially wrap your head around. I did print out these player helper that somebody on Board Game Geek made. So it's got all the different cards and it goes into, basically just breaks down the symbology on them, so there's no guesswork with how that works. So I would recommend getting that because it can be a little difficult to wrap your head around. Now here we've got all kinds of different loot. You can see you got crossbows and spell tomes, and you even have, so here, Studded Jerkin of the Bear. So there's going to be multiple, let's find more bear stuff. See if we can get all the bear stuff out so you can see. So there's throwing axes of the bear. The war horn of the bear. Great axe of the bear. Is that everything? That might be. Yeah, I think it's just four. Yeah, so you can see down here at the bottom that as you gain these, it's going to increase the benefit of having all the different pieces of that set. And there's multiple different sets in there. And for instance, so right here, so the set of the bear, whenever you perform a melee attack, add 1, 2, or 3 to your die total if you have 2, 3, or 4 pieces of the set equipped. So, and there's let's see, how many different sets are there? There's the bear, the lion, the panther, the phoenix. And then if you have the storage expansion, there's the set of the viper, a set of the scarab, which I do have that. So about 6 different sets for you to play around with, which is really cool. You've got spells here: Giant Strength, Holy Abundance, Dungeon Scry, Claw of Darkness, Eagle Swiftness, Fireball, of course. Here are the goblin. Goblin's going to be a huge problem for you while you're playing the game. Stabby Goblin, Mighty Goblin, Spelly Goblin, all these different kinds of goblins. here are some of the more difficult enemies to deal with: Minotaur, Ooze, Wraith, Dire Serpent, Vampire Imp. Which, by the way, all these have these fantastic. So the players have these miniatures, and there's these meeples for the goblins. You have goblins right here, and then you also have all these different. So, for instance, the Minotaur right here. Right, so that is super cool. I like that a lot. All right, here are the rooms. This is the stories expansion, which I don't use most of the time, but it is there if you want it. But so you can see all these rooms with this fantastic artwork, and so when you start the game, you'll actually have rooms around it like this. And then as you start exploring, maybe you flip this one over, and then you can connect it however you want. But so maybe I connect it like that, and I come in here, and then that means that, oops, didn't mean to, it would be face down. So then you're like that, and you come into this room, then maybe you explore down here. You flip it over, and okay, so I'll do it like that. And so now there's another room here to explore, and it keeps going like that. Eventually, the grid, I can't remember how big the grid can be, but I use a player mat so I make sure the grid doesn't get too big. But you keep exploring, and the whole goal is to eventually find the boss that you're going to fight. And before we show the bosses, let me show you all the different, let's see, so the bosses are back here. All right, so these are the different player characters, that you can be, the different heroes. You've got Evelyn, the Dryad Druid, Thorin, the Firebrand Dwarf Fighter. They all have these fantastic miniatures. Let's see if we can find. Yeah, so there we go. So there is her miniature right there, which you can see they are very close to what the artwork is. Thorin, the Firebrand Dwarf is here. So some really, really cool stuff going on. My favorite one, as far as what he looks like, even though he's not my favorite to play, is this guy, the Pandakin Brewmaster. Pretty cool looking. So yeah, and then like I said, you're trying to find these bosses. I mean, and you don't know which boss you're going after until you actually locate him. You got the dragon, Mind Lasher, a Seer, a Pharaoh, Demon Lord, and again, there's some expansions in here, so some of that might be expansion content. But that is Tiny Epic Dungeons. It really feels like a dungeon crawl. It doesn't feel like they really had to sacrifice anything to make it fit with the Tiny Epic series. I really like it a lot. Tiny Epic Dungeons. All right, number 12 is Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon. Now, this is a dark sort of retelling, not even retelling, but a dark continuation of the King Arthur story. So this is the exploration journal. There's all kinds of story in here, excerpts. The way this works is that the numbers go to different locations. You can see let me make sure this is the Fall of Avalon. So the chart, Conclave, the Whitening, these different locations, Mirror Lake, and while you're there, you'll have options of what you can do, and you'll then refer back to the journal, and that's where the story will be, and then it'll give you more choices and that sort of thing. Rulebook is not the worst one from Awakened Realms, but it's not great. In particular, there's some issues getting initially organized and everything, but it's not terrible. And in my instructional video, I do kind of break down some of those confusions to help people figure it out. The 4 characters that come with the game are basically, you've got like a sort of a nature sort of, make potions and that sort of thing, healing herbs. You've got this druid, maggot. You've got a rev who's sort of your warrior, and then, or maybe, I think he's not quite your, maybe he's more like a rogue, and then Bayor is more of your warrior. The thing is, none of these guys are actual heroes. They're all like the D list, because the real heroes, and this was Neom is can kind of fit into any of those roles, and she was a Kickstarter like promo or something like that. She was an extra. But none of these characters are the heroes. They're all the D-list guys, because the real heroes have all disappeared. So here are the locations over here. So let's see. Yeah, so it's a modular map, except it's not randomized. So if you're here at Quinacht, then up here is going to be Hunter's Grove. You can see the map fits together. And let's say at this location you've got one of these miniers, right? So in order to beat, there's this stuff called the weirdness that's encroaching on the settlements and everything. In order to beat that back, you've got to have a minier that is lit and is burning to get the weirdness pushed back. But that will then have the map open up, because everything that is adjacent. So let's see, we've got 104 over here, got 105 down here, what's that, 103. All right, so initially when you light the minier, it would do something like that, right? But then it also counts for these. So if your character moved to this location, well, now you can open up this up here, 107, and 109 down here, and of course if you moved over here, it would be keep opening up like this. But you can see now moving here doesn't open up this here, because there's no arrow, so this is actually cut off. So you'd have to actually come up here to Hunter's Grove to get 106 open. But you can see that this map is really cool, very detailed. It's got all this different stuff going on, different special things that can happen. Here you can pay 1 food to gain a wealth. Here you can gain 2 food, but then you have to draw a green encounter, which the green encounters are all sort of nature-based encounters. So, for instance, the blue encounters here. Oh, these are actually diplomacy, which the other 3 types of encounters are all combat usually, but this one is actually diplomacy, where you're kind of talking your way out of it. So let's see. So for instance, if you end up with the press gang here, a group of recruiters approaches you with heavy cudgels and illegible contract. All right, so you're going to start here in the gray, and you're trying to move the conversation up until you get to the top of the green. That means that you have convinced them to, either escaped or you've out-talked them. So you choose which path you're going to go on. Or if you drop all the way down to the bottom of the red, then you've lost, and they've managed to do what they're doing. You got drunken night, you've got hallucinations, so this sort of stuff. With the drunken night, you're either going to rein them in or talk them down. With the hallucinations, you're either going to navigate the crowd or play a madman. And so those are the diplomacy ones. Let's see. You know what? Let me show you how. So with combat and diplomacy work very similarly, but so here's some Bayor combat cards. If I were to play avoidance first, right? When I'm looking at these and I'm trying to connect these keys here, and so like I could play. After I play avoidance, then I can play mock the weak, and because that's connected there, so that could work. And as you're playing them, you're only going to get benefits for the ones that connect, but that's all part of trying to build your deck that you're going to be using for combat and for diplomacy. You have 1 deck for combat, 1 for diplomacy. I really like the way this combat works and diplomacy works. It's something that you definitely have to get used to, and you definitely take some trial and error as far as building the decks. I'm trying to find the rest of the encounters, but you kind of get the idea. Oh, here we go. So purple encounters are going to be creatures that have been sort of infected by the weirdness. You've got disembodied veracity, grave robber, not necessarily a weirdness thing going on there, but then the whispering wisp, mist stalker, apparition. Let's see, weird claimed. So that's a person who has been claimed by the weirdness. Dreadcaller, stuff like that, right? All right. And then green, excuse me, is you got the weird bear, pack of strays, glade hare, frenzied boar. See much more about vengeful druid, about nature type stuff. Underbrush worm. All right. Weird hog, giant runtling, and let's see what were. I think the other one was the. There's one more set of encounters in here. Yeah, the silver, which are all just sort of normal human people for the most part. Band of highwaymen, wandering priestess, seasoned warrior, warband, bow maiden. Oh, and one last thing that I really like about this. So, as you're playing, when you start. So you got these three different tracks: terror, health, and energy. And oh, actually, that's not what you use for the health. The health actually has this right here, because as the health drops, it provides a maximum for your energy. So if your health was here or here, and it dropped down, it would drag energy down with it. And then if terror ever goes above your health, then bad things happen as well. And you're able to get all these different skills that so this, you did motivation, that attaches to your empathy right here. All right, and let's see. Then you've got slick salesman that attaches to your practicality down here. And as you build out your character, you can really start to focus in on, this side. It's going to have a lot more to do with diplomacy, whereas aggression, courage, and practicality are going to have more to do with combat. But it's not one for one. It's not necessarily always exactly like that. This game just provides a lot of really great choices as far as building out your player deck. And then I love the narrative. I love the story in this game. It was a lot of fun getting into, and Tainted Grail is just a fantastic experience, and I cannot wait to get into. I've got the two expansions for it as well. Or I guess technically I've got 3 expansions. Very excited to get into those and see what comes next. And number 11 is The Lost Ruins of Arnak. This is a game that combines deck building and worker placement. You are placing your people out on this board, and as you do, you can unlock additional levels up on the board to find more powerful things. And then you're moving along. You got a couple tracks that you're moving along. The artwork in this game is phenomenal. The feeling of exploration in the game. I mean, it's not like you're uncovering new. It's not an feeling of exploration the way it is in like Zaya or something like that, where you're literally flipping over new tiles. But the game still has this sort of adventurer, explorer feel to it, sort of like Indiana Jones or something like that. You've only got a single action per turn, which is something that really makes it feel like everything you do it matters. You got to decide exactly what it is, the right thing to do right now, and that's it, because you only have the one action that you can do. And the game setup provides a lot of variability, so every time you play, you're going to have different things, different options in front of you as far as what path you should take. And then all the different areas where luck might be an issue in the game provides a lot of ways to mitigate that luck. It really, you feel like you have a lot of agency in how this is going to play out. Lost Ruins of Arnak really was one that just grabbed me, and besides all the the fun of the game itself, I can't stress enough how beautiful this game is. The artwork is just stunning in Lost Winds of Arnak, and I can't wait to get to the table again. So there you go, that was my number 20 through 11. Be sure to come back and check out our top 10. We're gonna have, I believe, 2 guests provide their top 10s as well. Very excited for that. And yeah, until next time, if you're bored online, bored offline.